Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. We want to welcome you to session 9 of the webinar, International Association for Peace and Economic Development. The session today looks at perspectives from business leaders. And the theme is Creating Mutual Prosperity, the essential role of private enterprise and the rule of law to rebuild economies and grow employment. We will start by giving you a rundown of the program for the day. The first speaker for the day is going to be Professor Fatou Sow, who is the president of RACEF, African Network for Support to Women Entrepreneurs. And after which will be followed by Mr. Joseph Boucher, who is the founder and Group Chief Executive Officer for J.M. Boucher Investment Group. Followed by Dr. Aban Malaj, who is former Minister of Economy and Finance in Albania. This will be closely followed by Mr. Dan Katarivas, Chairman Israel EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Israel. And finally, we are going to have Dr. Thomas McDavid, who is the chairman of Washington Times and also HG Magnolia Global Foundation. We will be inviting you not to leave the webinar because after that, we are going to have the closing ceremony immediately after. Now we are going to introduce Professor Sow, who is going to be our first speaker. But before we do that, like I said, we are reminding you to stay on after the webinar for the closing ceremony. Professor Sow is the president of the African Network of Support to Women's Entrepreneurship in Senegal. She is a senior lecturer at IFAN, University Cheikh Anta Diop, Dakar, where she directs the Gender and Scientific Research Laboratory that she created in 2004. Professor Sow is also a gender expert at the United Nations Agencies for Gender Training, Evaluation, and Program Development in 15 African countries. She is a Knight of the National Order of the Lion. She was nominated as Leading Educator in 2008 by FAWE, a title awarded only to 10 women educators who contribute to the promotion of education in Africa. Let us welcome Professor Sow from Senegal.
Bonjour, bonsoir à tout le monde. Je voudrais d'abord dire le plaisir que j'ai de participer à cette activité, même si mon temps est très pris en ce moment. Mais j'ai accepté de le faire à partir du travail que je fais avec les femmes. Le sujet qu'on nous propose sur créer une prospérité mutuelle, je crois que c'est la question de l'emploi et de la reconstruction de nos économies, surtout dans les pays du Sud, ne peut se faire sans un état de droit. Et ce n'est que dans la solidarité et l'inclusion, quand je parle de l'inclusion, c'est pour amener la dimension de la femme que nous pouvons garantir une prospérité durable. Alors, c'est important qu'on interroge la nature de nos entreprises, qui sont les principales créatrices de richesse et d'emplois dans les pays pauvres. Au Sénégal, 90% des emplois sont créés par le secteur privé, mais ces emplois-là sont surtout un emploi informel.
Most of them are in the informal sector, representing 96.4%. As such, the informal private sector must be a priority for our state. The current COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the limits of policies that have favored foreign investors, resulting in dangerous slowdown in economic activity and
de soulèvement et d'instabilité.
And instability. Against this backdrop, the businesses that are of interest to me are the so-called informal ones, because as I mentioned, I lead a women's organization in the informal sector. Most of them are involved in agricultural production, food processing, catering, clothing, hairdressing, trade, craft, and services. So this is the real economy in my country. And with the coming of COVID-19, most of these activities have slowed down and many of these businesses have gone bankrupt or closed, especially micro enterprises, because they are confronted with problems such as inappropriate legislation, unfair competition, challenges to accessing finance, corruption, and poor access to technologies. Regarding legislation, we can say that the current law does not sufficiently protect women entrepreneurs. The World Bank has acknowledged that programs which are currently being run do not defend women's right to participate in the economy with equal opportunities and equal access to benefits. Women are therefore facing obstacles in terms of access to employment, and they also have difficulty in accessing public contracts. In Senegal, we say that there is 15% of such contracts to women, but because of criteria and modalities, women are not able to access such public contracts. There is also the issue of corruption, which negatively impacts the private sector in all countries, but most especially women. And I myself experienced this corruption because I realized that 75% of women's profits were going to corrupt agents. In such situation, the companies that these women have set up cannot grow. Women are therefore facing unfair competition. Their products and creativity are not protected. And we therefore need to question the issue of intellectual property. Women are creating a lot of things, but when they go to other countries, for instance, the US, they have to face the challenge of competition from Asia, and they are not able to actually grow. They do not also have access to adequate funding. It is for this reason that most of them have to limit themselves to microcredit with little chance of seeing their business grow. Studies and analysis have shown that Africa's future depends solely on businesses, but also on the role that women will play, because there is a link between gender inequalities and economic growth, which has been displayed by several studies carried out by credible institutions. For example, we have the UK weekly The Economist, which in 2006 wrote a story about keys to economic growth that lie in women's hand. Similarly, McKinsey Global Institute published a report in September 2013 that said that gender equality generates direct gain in growth. The OECD also published a report in 2015 where it said that economic growth depends on women. And they said that if we reduce the productivity gap between men and women, this would lead to a GDP growth rate per capita of 0.3%. And that if, on the assumption of full convergence by 2030 is applied, then we will get to 0.6 point. This means that if many women are able to establish enterprises, then France would gain 0.4% additional growth, representing 9.4% over 20 years. There is also a report published by the IMF, published in February 2015, entitled Fair Play, More Equal Laws Boost Female Labor Force Participation. And it shows that greater access for women to the world of work translates into greater economic growth. On the other side of the coin, we realize that a number of scientific studies have shown that the presence of a significant gender gap in access to the labor market, entrepreneurial activity, and education can slow down the same growth. To end, I would also cite the study of INSEE carried out in 2012, which showed that gender inequalities are likely to affect economic growth through several channels. Let's say, for instance, human capital. Low investment in the human capital of women restricts the growth potential of the economy. There is also, number 2, factors of production, because if barriers prevent women from working in certain sectors or professions, then the factors are not allocated towards their best productive use. This is because women do not always have resources. In terms of agriculture, for instance, they do not have means of production which can boost their produce. There's also the issue of savings. Women do not have this ability to sufficiently save, and this leads to slowdown in business for developing countries. This is to say that a private sector must be inclusive for developing countries. It is only when the private sector is inclusive that we can have sustainable development and prosperity for the continent of Africa. To conclude, I wish to say that Africa's future depends on how we treat the issue of women and gender. It is for this reason that public authorities need to support women who are mostly involved in the informal sector, since the informal sector is the main sector in the South economies. And I will talk about 2 studies carried out by Mohamed Amin and Veselin Kunched in 2015, who analyzed the relationship between gender inequalities and growth. And they said that developing countries are characterized by low standards of living and high gender inequalities. It is for this reason that these countries can reduce gender inequalities and also stimulate their economic growth by implementing policies to combat gender inequalities. So I wanted to draw the attention on the fact that it is the private sector which contributes to only 4% in Senegal. So that we realize that the informal sector is actually giving us more revenue in Senegal, and it is mostly made up of women. Unfortunately, such women do not have the means that will allow them to develop these informal sector, which is very capital for our economies and for our companies. So in conclusion, I wish to say that we need to give greater attention to the women's situation in South countries to ensure profitable prosperity for everyone, men and women included. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. Professor, since you have to go, can I ask you one question before you leave?
Okay, yes.
Okay. The question is, just a second. Women make up a minority of the formal sector. How do we encourage women to participate more in enterprise creation, and especially in large enterprises rather than small businesses?
Okay. Vous me posez la question de savoir.
So you're asking the fact that women constitute minority in the private sector. It is true that in the formal private sector, women constitute about 18% in my country, Senegal. So they are mostly involved in the informal sector. The question is that we need to help them to move more towards the formal sector. And how can we ensure such growth? And I spoke about all the limitations and challenges that prevent women from going towards this formal sector. And we sometimes compel them to stay in the microcredit sector. When I look at my country, for instance, the Senegal Emergent Plan for
du financement des femmes, c'est dans la microfinance.
We realize that most women are limited to microfinance,
unités de production. Il leur faut évidemment aussi
agriculture. We do not also focus on their education. So we need to focus on training, technology, and financing. But we see that the laws are discriminatory and we do not examine them enough. And sometimes it is this discriminatory laws, which are the primary factors which limit women, because usually we focus more on other issues because the authorities are usually more focused on the males. So we need to focus on the aspect of legislation. When we talk about intellectual property, for instance, we realize that intellectual property or creativity of women is not appreciated. Meanwhile, we need to focus on those things because we copy them to put and replace them in a global and local market. I hope I was able to answer your question, but if it's not clear,
Thank you very much, Professor. You show really deep insight into the business world of women. Thank you very much. We want to remind all our audience that at the bottom right of your screen, you have interpretation. You click on it and you select the language you wish to listen to. A lot of people are complaining they do not understand the different languages. So please remember to click on interpretation and select your language. We are now going to move to our second speaker, who is none other than Mr. Joseph Busher himself. Mr. Joseph Busher is the founder and Group Chief Executive Officer of the J.M. Busher Investment Group in Zimbabwe. He attended the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, and received 4 degrees, 1 diploma, and 7 professional certificates in mathematical finance. Between 1994 and 2000, Mr. Busher worked for HSBC Securities SA, Standard and Corporate Merchant Bank, and Netcore. In 2000, he founded the J.M. Busher Investment Group. Mr. Busher is president of Freezing Congress, a political party in Zimbabwe. He is also the founder of the NGO J.M. Busher 54, Races for Peace and Unity in Africa. Let us welcome Mr. Joseph Busher.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the viewers and the listeners, and thank you for the introduction. Creating prosperity, the essential role of private enterprises, and the rule of law to rebuilding economies and growing employment. This is really what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon. There are about 4 key ingredients to mutual prosperity. The first one is peace, oneness, and shared values, because I believe that if we do not have peace, we cannot as a people be able to develop, whether socially or economically. The second key ingredient, rule of law. Then the third one is property rights. And the fourth one is income security. I believe these are the critical ingredients for us to be able to ensure that the equitable society, that's the mutual prosperity we're talking about. But what is mutual prosperity? Ways like common, ways that will come to mind is collective. When you're talking about mutual prosperity, you're talking about collectively, how do we as a people benefit? So I'll go to oneness of the human race with shared values and possibly a shared world vision will lead to peace and eventually towards creating mutual prosperity among all nations. There's no doubt that countries with proper rule of law do succeed, are far much better in terms of providing for their nations. But I also believe that the greatest law is the law of humanity. That is the greatest law. If all of us, we can understand and accept the diversity that is there, and that we've got one destiny, then I think the world will be a better place for all of us. We don't have to be every time talk about inclusive economies, talk about class, because we have certainly understand that in diversity there's richness. In diversity we'll be able to achieve more. But unfortunately, given the selfishness, given the greed we see, we have other laws. We've got the Dutch law, the Roman law, Sharia law. All these laws were enacted or developed to be able to make sure that the human race is controlled and prevented from self-destruction. So for me, I think what I want to be able to share, is oneness and humanity. There is no law greater than the law of humanity. And if we were to look at and obey, these 5 ingredients and say, how do we live with them? That is oneness, peace, shared values, shared vision, the rule of law, which is applicable to everybody without favor, without any fear, without any prejudice, income security, property rights. If these are all taken together, then I think we will, as a people, be firmly on the path towards creating mutual prosperity. Now, property rights means undisputed ownership of authentic investments. That's what property rights means, by individuals or legal entities, without the risk of loss due to either political, legislative, or any other external factors. The reason why I think Africa has lagged behind and some parts of the world have lagged behind is purely because there are no property rights. People do not respect property rights, whether it's in any form of investments. Property rights really does not necessarily mean the physical property rights. It could be any form of investments we have. And if there is that acknowledgement and respect of that, I believe the world will be far much better. Property rights will lead to job security. Job security will lead to income security, and certainly pension or retirement security. Will just lead to the entire financial security. Now, when these 4, the things I just talked about in terms of oneness and peace, shared values, rule of law, job and income security, which is achieved through property rights, then we have almost a balanced equilibrium of interests. Then we begin to talk about mutual prosperity, and the certainty thereof becomes quite real. We could go into countries where we certainly look in terms of where there are doubts or the rule of law as it is accepted universally. What that means is that those countries have less GDP per capita. The Gini coefficient is high in some of those countries. So I think what we need to do is then to say, how does business, the private enterprises, private sector, play a role alongside the rule of law in trying to create a better society, in trying to rebuild the economies. And the economies have been destroyed over the years through different means. Economies have been destroyed through civil wars, through wars. And this year in particular, it has been amazing that 7 months down the line, the COVID had brought economies to a standstill. No other time in history when everything stopped, from kids going to school, to flights, to businesses, and that has really changed, the face of the earth. We have lots of parts in Africa where there's no internet, where there's no ICT, and hence children could not attend school via e-learning, whether it's Zoom or any other platforms where kids could continue with their studies. This again has created a massive disparity between the haves and the don't haves in terms of access to quality education. So I believe that is businesses, private enterprises that have to come through to be able to provide equal opportunities to the people of the world. So platforms like Teams, platforms like Zoom have come to try and equalize that, but still, we still have challenges with access to those, whether through data or any other. So private enterprises do not only create jobs or employment, but they create personal value, financial security. I believe private enterprises are the foundation from which great economies are built. We have seen countries that have adopted and respect the role of private enterprises, countries that respect property rights, countries that respect human rights, countries that respect individualism in terms of responsibility and being able to that they have been successful. Successful enterprises are evidence of intellectual property and innovation. So it is quite clear, ladies and gentlemen, and to all the viewers, that creating mutual prosperity is something we so desire, because then the world will be far much better, and there will be more peace, there will be more innovation, and there will be more development if basically those four are observed and accepted. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Busha, for your presentation. We want to remind you that at the bottom right of your screen, you have interpretation services there. We are now moving to our third speaker, who is Professor Aben Malaj, a former Minister of Economy and Finance in Albania. Professor Aben Malaj is graduated in finance at the University of Tirana, Albania from 1997 to 1998. He served as Minister of Finance from 2002 to 2003, as Minister of Economy, and from 2004 to 2005 as Minister of Finance. From 2005 to 2006, he attended the Harvard Kennedy School as Senior Fellow at the MRCBG, focusing on research into Western Balkans European integration. Professor Malaj is currently serving as the President of the Institute of Public Policy and Good Governance, and as the Deputy Rector of the Encampus University for Western Balkan countries. You are welcome, Professor Malaj, and please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. First, I would like to thank the excellent organizer and the very dedicated participation on this inspiring conference focused on the real challenges of our daily life. I would like to share my presentation. Just a moment, please. I very appreciate what our colleague mentioned in his speech about the relation between peace and prosperity. We know from the history of Western Balkan, but also the history of some African countries, the peace will be precondition for prosperity, but without prosperity, we can provide sustainable peace. In this context, to eliminate the conflicts and to work together for the peace and prosperity will be the priority, not just for the political leaders, but also for academics, private business, and our society. Many colleagues discuss about negative impacts of COVID-19. We know that the impact in economy is very large. We see, based on the panic and the uncertainties and the insecurities, the private consumption is going down or declining very deeply, and the growth economy on 2020 will be less than -3%, and in my country will be -9%. Second negative impact is about investment, private investment from domestic investors, but also about FDIs. And some negative impact are in export, especially in tourism in our economy and other sectors. Uncertainties are going to create a lot of cost about capital markets and about capital flighting, and this is a real problem for the poor or developing country about the financial resources to support their priorities. When you discuss for Africa, I like to share some positive approaches. I'm teaching economics and development in my country. If we see some demographic figures, Africa will be very important region for the future of global economy. And we see on the right of my presentation, many developed countries will have a lot of shortage in labor force. Germany, for example, will have about 27%, and some other countries about 1/3 of the labor force. In this context, the better investment for better education, health, and social protection in Africa, I think is a long-term investment, not just for Africa, but also for developed countries. We know that some negative impacts, especially in your region, about COVID-19, based on the level of education, and we see how deeply they can lose some revenues just for this kind of crisis, and also about capital returns and the GDP growth rate. In this context, the better education will be top priority to find the best solution about cyclical and structural unemployment. We have a lot of debate about pandemic, about lockdowns, and about economy and social life. In this context, the solution now is not just to be in favor of lockdown, but we need to provide the vision, policy, instruments, and projects, how to create a better coexistence between pandemics, which is going to be more usually in our daily life, and also how to support economic and social life. In this context, we need to use in the way manner the monetary policy, fiscal policy, but for me, the more important are structural reforms. About impact of COVID-19 on business, figures are not so optimistic, but as a researcher, as a politician, we need to have a positive approach. We need to know the real problems, and after that to offer the best solution how to reduce the negative impact on employment, in revenue, in disponible revenue for every family, and how to reduce the administrative barrier, how to reduce the cost of businesses to open, to develop, or to close your businesses. Lots of debate about what kind of policy will be useful in this period, but the structure of different fiscal packages compared by IMF in all countries have the three top priorities. The first, to provide the financial support for unemployment people, because during the COVID-19, about 300 million new unemployed people will be in the global economy, which is not easy. Second is to provide the financial support for the poor peoples, because we know that after the crisis, the poor is coming poor and the richer is coming richer, but we need to find support just for the poor people and to support them. It's not a problem to discuss about finance support, but in medium and long term, we need to support the reforms which are necessary to provide economic dignity. If we see the figures about social protection, the average in the world is about 15, but in Europe and Central Asia is 90-60%, and in Africa it's just 39%, or in Arab states it's just 33%. And if the people don't have the social protection, for sure they will be in the risky situation for themselves and their families. Government has three instruments to react on the COVID-19. The first is monetary policy, and we are discussing about unconventional monetary policy, but the results are not so good because many countries didn't respect the golden rules of management of their countries and their public finance, which is that the best time to repair your roof are the days when sun is shining. About the fiscal space, we know that, and we know from the crisis 2008, if we are going to support economic growth through the higher individual debt, higher debt of businesses or public debt, the growth based on the high debt is not a healthy growth, and one day you can pay the price for that. And we know the history of the countries for crisis 2008 who paid a high social price for what they did wrong about structural reform to support the economic growth of the economy from the reform, not from the high debt. It's not easy to debate between academics also, but also with policy makers about cyclical unemployment and structured unemployment. We know from World Economic Forum some research about structural unemployment. If we see in this slide, from now to 2020, the new economy of knowledge will create about 133 million new jobs, but also for the robotization and artificial intelligence, some countries can lose about 70 million jobs. But if we see the difference, they are about 58 million jobs in economy, and we need to have a more focus on education, not just the basic education, but about education for knowledge economy, and the best ways to have a real focus to science, technology, engineering, and math. One problem about the governance in this difficult time is about the cheap money or free money, which are injected now from different government, but also from IMF, World Bank, European Central Bank, EU, and other institutions. But we know the politicians are the same everywhere, and they can use this situation just to create more power, abuse power for themselves. If we see about the free money, and we see the last research from IMF about projects of public-private partnership, for me it's not just public partnership, is also private-public, private-public professional partnership. These are some projects which came through the corruption or state capture, and if you see losses about efficiency of this kind of investment is from 30 to 50%, which are billions of dollars which a politician can misuse in this difficult moment just based on the cost of the money. Some challenges ahead. The first element is about public credibility. I think that the reforms on anti-corruption and state capture must be top priority in poor and developing countries, because without public credibility, it's not easy for any government to do the right reforms in the right way, in the right time. Second, we know from the crisis on the past, but also for the crisis of COVID-19, it's not easy just a government to find a solution about how to reduce unemployment, how to reduce the poverty, how to increase the equality of opportunities without the better coordination with private businesses. And the key factor about private businesses is about the rule of law, is about property rights, is about informalization of informal economy, informalization of labor market, which is 2 times higher than informalization of economy. And for this reason, we need some reform based on the better coordination with different factors. Sometimes some governments prefer to use just penalties or to be arrogant and to fight to achieve the big results in the short time. This is not possible. Based in research in other countries, to reduce informal economy, 80% of reforms need to have a focus how to facilitate doing business, how to facilitate informal economy to be formal, how to facilitate the formalization of the labor market. What we learned from financial crisis 2008, which is useful for this situation, is that we need to use monetary and fiscal policy in the wise way and carefully, because we need to create the room for our economy when they have some external shocks. Another element which is present in our region, but also in Western Balkan countries, is about economic and political environment. Especially, we have some political crises which are increasing uncertainties and instability. And if the countries will be in a political instability, for sure, the peace will be difficult and prosperity is not possible. The best focus is to take structural reforms. We need to do reform to promote more competitive and vibrant economy, which are more useful, and their impact is longer than impacts of monetary and fiscal policy. And last but not least, we'd like to share with you about profile of our politicians, academics, and civil society. We need to be human beings in ourselves before to take responsibilities to change something in our countries. I like what Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, mentioned in his speech in MIT. And he mentioned that I'm not worried about artificial intelligence giving computers the ability to think like humans. I'm more concerned about people think like computers without values or compassion, without concern for consequences. And this is a critical issue about public credibility of our leaders to the positive spillover to all social factors as the best way to challenge what we are discussing about negative impacts of COVID-19, which is multidimensional. We are discussing for human cost, about the number of the people died and infected. We are discussing about social cost, about the new unemployment and the poor people. We are discussing about economic costs, about how deeply our economy are declining in 2020 and how difficult it will be to restart or to reset our economy in 2021. We're discussing for the budgetary cost because IMF, but also European Central Bank and all international institutions provided compromise in this difficult situation, especially for the better financial support for health sector. Countries can find some space to increase the public debt up to 30% for the concrete level on 2020. And the last but not least is about political cost. We need to do what is possible to reduce the political tensions, to reduce the political conflicts, because during the crisis, radicals or nationalists or populist leaders gaining some advantages, and we saw what happened in some, not just in the poor countries or developing countries, but also in developed countries. Thank you very much for this very short presentation, I hope.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aben Malaj. We are now going to move to our next presenter, who is none other than Mr. Dan Katarivas. Mr. Dan Katarivas is the chairman of the Israel-EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He graduated from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem with a bachelor's degree in economics and political science. He presently holds the position of Director General, Foreign Trade and International Relations at the Manufacturers Association of Israel and in charge of international relations at the Federation of Israeli Economic Organizations, PIBO. He is also the chairman of the Israel-EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Beforehand, he served for 25 years with the Israel government. His last position was Deputy Director General for International Affairs at the Ministry of Finance. You are welcome, Mr. Dan Katarivas.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for Universal Peace Federation. I'm very honored to be here and to speak to such an audience in so many places in the world. I will definitely would like today to address the role of private sector in actually bringing people together and strengthening peace, understanding, mutual benefit. Because I think that we are living in very, very difficult times. There is no question that the COVID-19 has demonstrated how interdependent is the world and how actually no one can actually only solve his own problem or concentrate only on his own problem. But the world is a small place. Everybody is connected to the other. And if we don't work together and act together, then we cannot overcome the problem. So COVID, and I won't enter into the economic analysis, which was very well presented by my predecessor about the effect and the fact that we are definitely going to live what I would call the post-COVID era is going to be different than the pre-COVID era, but definitely the world is changing and we have to adapt to it. Now, the private sector in general, I can speak about the private sector in Israel in particular, but I think also has taken conscience that it has to take responsibility and not just concentrated on purely making money. Not that making money is necessarily something bad, but I think that more and more around the world, the business community definitely feels that it has also a social responsibility, also a role of doing more than just, I would say, making money. And on the contrary, the ethics today of businesses and it's developing, and we as a business organization are trying to also promote that development, is that business has a role in bringing people together, is contributing to better stability, to better prosperity, and the more there are business connections, the better it is. Now, I think that we in Israel, by the way, we have experience of having our businesses because we're a small country. Therefore, the internal market is very small. So by definition, we are looking at the global market for being our market. We are looking at the world for being the place where we can do business. And we do business for the sake of business, but we do business also for the sake of bringing more stability, more prosperity. And we have examples of activity that we have, whether it is in Asia, in Africa, in South America, where actually business are promoting understanding. Business are promoting the fact that people know one another better. Once people know one another, they less fear one another and they are more ready to cooperate. Through business, you can bring the people to cooperate, to have win-win situation. I'm also, by the way, as you see, connected to the European Chamber or to Europe, and I think that Europe, with all the pro and con, definitely has taught the world after Second World War that it is possible to try and to create stability, prosperity by using economy. I mean, the example of the EU, I think, is a very good example where you take economy as a vehicle for promoting peace, prosperity, and understanding. Not that Europe is perfect, on the contrary, there are plenty of problems, but the fact that the leaders there at certain point used economy as a promoter of cooperation could serve an example in many other places. Not that you have to copy the European model, because each culture, each region has its own specificity. You have to take each country is a region with its own problem, but the idea that economy, that business is a very important vehicle for bringing people together, working together, acting together. This is something that will promote more understanding. And whether it is for the sake of doing business or for the sake of developing, I mean, I know that there was a lot of suspicion, and there is a lot of suspicion, rightly so sometimes, when you have the big corporations which are actually coming to countries, and people are saying they're going to exploit us and they only want to make money. I think the business world has changed, or is changing, is in the process of changing. And you see more and more, even big corporate, but also medium-sized enterprises, which are coming with also a different type of message. But they know that they need partnership on the ground when they work. When companies from developed world are coming to developing world, it could be a win-win situation. The thing is to try to find benefit from both sides. And in Israel, we have, and our companies are working in Africa, in areas where they are bringing technology as a vehicle for understanding, as a vehicle for development. And I think this is very important to try and to see how to use the economic vehicle, technology, as a promoter of peace and prosperity. As you know, in Israel, we have been going from being a very, I would say, a country not very developed into a relatively developed country by putting emphasis on education and on technology. We don't have a lot of natural resources. The only resources we have is the human resources, which is the key for the development, is the key for prosperity. At the end of the day, people are making the difference. It's people that make difference, and understanding between people and working together. People working together, that's the best way of creating prosperity and promoting peace and understanding. So in Israel, for instance, the issue of water was a major issue. We developed a lot of technology, and we are exporting those technology. We're ready to make the world participate in management of water technology, and we have now Israeli companies that go all around the world, not just to make money, but also to develop the technology of water, to bring the possibility of people to develop their own resources by bringing them the technology. It goes in water, it goes in agriculture, because food security, as we all know, is something extremely important. We were lucky to have assets of people that developed a lot of technology in agriculture, and it's not only for our own benefit, it's something that we want, and the business want to share it around the world. So we have made demonstration farm, whether it's in China or in Vietnam or in the Philippines or in Africa or in South America, where business are actually the forefront of bringing technology and bringing prosperity. And I think the suspicion which concerning business should be a bit more, I would say, or less suspicion, because at the end of the day, I think that this is a best vehicle when you have vested interest and when you have a partner on the ground together with a partner from abroad that are coming together and they join forces and they have a vested interest in doing business together. This is a very good vehicle for bringing more prosperity, more understanding. I think that the business community is definitely moving in that direction. There are a lot of discussion about corporate social responsibility, trying to develop it in a better way, trying to see how the business sector can actually align itself to the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. I think that all those ideas are something that the business community is starting more and more to understand, to incorporate into its behavior. And again, you can find good example, bad example, but I think that the suspicion that used to exist vis-a-vis businesses, that they are only a negative vehicle and they're only here to exploit, I think this is something that is changing, something that is changing in the positive manner. And I said, we have good examples. We have also, and I know there is also sometimes suspicion vis-a-vis international organizations, whether it is the World Bank, regional banks, etc. It's true that past history has taught us that there are sometimes also abuses, and I know that this seminar or this meeting talks also about the necessity of having the rule of law, and not always the rule of law was kept, and people took advantage of corruption, etc. But I think that even the business sector understands that, or more and more understand that corruption is actually something very negative, something that hurts actually the real conduct of business. And we see ethical codes which are more and more introduced into the practices of private sector and of international organization. Again, not that everything is fine, not that everything is good, but I think that the direction is in the right direction. We are moving into the right direction. COVID, again, is only another, I would say, is a necessity to bring us into the right direction because we need to cooperate. We don't have the solution. Each of us don't have the solution at home. It's only by cooperating internationally that we can find a solution. And again, the vaccine, it will be effective only if everybody has it, not if only one part of the world has it and not the other part. So the solution is to be global. We are all so much depending on one another and we cannot ignore one another, on the contrary. So I think that the economic dimension in the peace building is very, very important. I think that we have examples in Israel now. Everybody, maybe you heard that we are now establishing diplomatic relations or normalization with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain. We have peace with Egypt, with Jordan, even with our Palestinians. We have a lot of economic cooperation because we believe that by building economic ties, that will bring more understanding, it will bring more connection, and we bring common interest in safeguarding stability. And we are trying from time to time to separate from the politics and the economics, because sometimes the politics is not in the good direction, but business people usually from all sides, they found their interest. And if they are more and more in contact, they build more and more cooperation, they have built something sustainable. This is much more lasting than anything else, because everybody can gain from that. And if there are positive gain to everybody, that's the best solution for working together. So I think that no question about it, the economic dimension, when I talk about economy, I'm talking in very wide terms. It can be in technology, it can be tourism, it can be trade, it can be investment, it can be joint venture. All that are economic dimension that if companies work together in the developing world, together with companies in the developed world, this brings prosperity to everybody. Obviously, the question how you divide the fruits of that prosperity have to be equal. We have to treat one another in an equal manner with respect. And this is the best recipe for bringing prosperity and peace. And I hope that the business sector all around the world will mobilize themselves, and they are actually starting to understand and mobilize themselves for that code of bringing peace, prosperity, and stability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Katarivas, for your presentation. We noted that business and economics are key for peace building, especially as they bring development and prosperity. We are now moving on to our final presenter, who is Mr. Thomas McDavid. He is the chairman of the Washington Times in the United States of America. He has served in a number of leadership roles since joining the Times in 1994, including business director with the Washington Times National Weekly, general manager of the TWT's magazine division, marketing director, vice president, and now president and CEO. Former senior vice president of the marketing and communication, Points of Light Foundation, founded by President George H.W. Bush. Mr. McDavid also serves as chairman of the UPF USA and as the president of the UPF International. We welcome his presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, and Dr. Atanga, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm sorry I can't join you live in Zoom and had to come to you through a video message. I'm here in the founders room of the Washington Times, where I serve as chairman. I've been here for 28 years now. And I also serve as the chairman of HJ Magnolia Global, as well as helping to coordinate IAED around the world. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you. Especially I'm honored to be on a panel with Joseph Busha, He's become a hero of mine, Bush of 54, and the races that you run all over Africa, and the beautiful vision I saw. I took the pledge, by the way, on your website, to see and have a peaceful, prosperous, and united people of Africa and the world. We are completely one in heart with that, and soul, spirit, and action. Well, IAED is a new effort that's under the umbrella of the Universal Peace Federation. It was founded in February of 2020 in Seoul, Korea, at the behest of Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon. It's a brilliant strategic move that many of us were waiting for, to bring together the best, brightest minds and practitioners in business, economy, investment, and entrepreneurism. The summit gathered over 5,000 delegates, and it convened under those basic themes of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. We did a resolution at that time with the 500 people that were there for the business conference. That included people like Jim Rogers, Neil Bush, who's the son of George H.W. Bush, former President of the United States. He's the chairman of Points of Light Foundation that helps encourage corporate volunteerism. We had people like Professor Bill Imeke, a famous author from Columbia University, who's one of the leading experts on value-oriented investments, social value investing. It was a great conference. But from there, we built networks all over the world, in every region of the world. And that's what this conference is coming to here. One point in our resolution that we came up with is we affirm our belief that business leaders have the opportunity and the responsibility to work in collaboration with other sectors of society to make the world a better place, addressing its most significant challenges and promoting world peace, long-term mutual prosperity, and truly sustainable development. What we do is important. We're just building this network around the world. We envision it to be thousands of people in the near future. Rooted in these principles, we seek to build a network of business, government, and economic thought leaders committed to driving economic development towards establishing a global environment of interdependence and mutual prosperity. We do this in three ways. Number one is professional development and thought leadership. We want to provide the best content that can inspire and motivate young entrepreneurs and seasoned veterans like many of you to take hold of the role of business and question the question of purpose of economy, the purpose of wealth, that our businesses can make a difference in society, especially working between the public and private sector and with those other areas of society that UPF is working in, such as the elected officials, religious leaders, academics, women, and youth. We think that it's a time of international synergy, like a grand strategy of a global awakening of how we all fit together. So leadership development, number one. Number two, building a community, a network. We bring each other together, we can cross-fertilize, we can learn from one another, do business with each other. And most important, create a community, a network that's not only in Africa, not only in Europe, Asia, the US, Canada, all the way through the world, every country, of people like yourselves who ascribe to that value perspective, that life is more than just what you see in the physical realm, and that we really are responsible for the future generations, and that we must break through at this time. As I love the way Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon speaks, when she spoke to groups of congressmen and parliamentarians around the world. The problems in this world are so complex. Human efforts alone have not succeeded in solving them. Especially that's true with the COVID-19 crisis and the political and security crises, the economic issues that we all face. And she called for people to think differently. We can't solve these issues with human efforts alone. We need to realize that there's a creator. It's a different shift of mindset. And you know how important mindset is in business. And that's why I like working with her and in this organization. So leadership development, building a network that can be vibrant, and then eventually turning our face to society to tackle the toughest problems, and doing it in a way that only business people understand, with innovation, accountability, imagination, and working across sectors. For that reason, we want to invite you to work together with our great leadership in Africa, my good friend Reverend Kathy Rigney, the chairperson of UPF, and Reverend Bakri Kamara. I know you're going to be hearing from him soon. Dr. Michael Balcom, who's based up in London, working together between Europe and Africa. It is a fabulous team of people, Jacques Marion and Dr. Otsuka, and everyone else that is involved with this organization. We really believe that the world is changing, and we're going through a phenomenon that is greater in impact as compared to the time when Albert Einstein discovered the theory of relativity, or electricity emerged later on, or when we built the internet. Greater than all of that technology in that physical realm of change, there is a great revolution of the human spirit taking place beyond race, beyond religious boundaries, beyond national and ethnic boundaries. And it's not just in the faith arena or the mental consciousness arena. It also involves business. It involves politics, culture, media, youth, women, academics. We have to transform culture, which is upstream from politics, and we have to do it together. We are truly a global family under one creator, and it's a pleasure to address you today. I encourage you, let's work together. We need your leadership. Let's band together and change the world. We can do it. God bless you, and God bless Africa, Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McDavid. Now we are going to move to the question and answer session, and we have a few questions to the different presenters. So our first question is going to go to Mr. Busha, and we have this question for you. How can we achieve the 4 points you just spoke on when there is gross violation of human rights in Africa, and how can we make business and money to genuinely serve the communities? Mr. Busha, you have the floor. Should I repeat the question?
No, I think, thank you so much, moderator. I got the question. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay.
So thank you so much for the question. You know, there are two things we need to do. We need to have a total paradigm shift, in particular in Africa. We need then to able to have a shared vision, shared values for us to be able to achieve that. As I said to you, you know, without peace, there's no economic development. Without peace, there's no social development. And peace is not the absence of war. So what we need now for us to be able to move there is a leadership that is sensitive to the well-being of people, a leadership that is adaptive to the new global world order, a leadership that is willing to listen and to learn. So our biggest challenge in Africa is that we have leadership that is possibly bereft of any ideas in terms of how to take the country forward. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that you know, all of us as individuals and as citizens of Africa, we must be able to respond to the call to action. And the call to action is by being embodiment of peace ourselves, by being embodiment of good citizens, and holding our leaders to account, you know, to be able to account. Now, you know, be able to get any investor, whether foreign direct investments or domestic investments, if there is no rule of law or if there is no property rights. So the law must apply to all citizens, to all people equally, you know, without saying this one is in government, then they've got their own sets of rules and how they are treated. That's where the biggest challenge is. If we can accept diversity, if we can understand that we've got one destiny as a human race, and be able to understand the environment that surrounds us and make sure that we preserve the best we can for next generations, then there will be peace, and then we'll be able to achieve that. But I think all of us, we need to take that responsibility and take the pledge to peace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Busha. Our next question is to Minister Malaj. Employers feel that they are exploited. Employees feel that they are exploited by employers, and similarly, employers consider that sometimes employees do not sufficiently value their work and risk of employers. What could be done to avoid this mutual distrust, especially in COVID and post-COVID times?
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Malaj.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. It's a real social problem for many workers everywhere. I think the best way is the workers need to create the association and to be hard voice in public, also to try to find a support for civil society. It's not easy. No one can provide what you deserve, but you can work very hard for your rights in the democratic way, and to protest and to find supporter in public media or social media, because through the positive pressure to the businessmen, you can help them also to change their behavior, because the good businessmen or people like friends in our panel knows that in the long term, to create sustainability for your profits or for your companies, you need to find the smart way how to influence your workers to love for what you're doing for them. I'd like to share something about ethics, mentioned from Buffett, one of the billionaires in the world. He mentioned that if you are looking to find partners, we are looking for 3 special values: to be intelligent, to have energy, and also to have integrity. But he advised us, you must know what will be your partners. If they don't have integrity, they can misuse their intelligence and their energy, how to kill you, not how to be part of your success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. Our last question goes to Mr. Katarivas. And the question goes thus: small and medium-sized businesses represent 90 to 95% of companies. What can be done to promote the growth of small and medium-sized companies? Mr. Katarivas?
Well, this is a good question. Every big company started as a small company. So first of all, there is hope, because all big companies actually did develop. Now, the best thing is, obviously, I mean, we do believe, and I do believe in what I see around me, is that education, technology, good management, those are the things that are very important. And I think that any small company has to really work hard and try to be ahead when it comes to technology, to keep all the time monitoring what is happening in its area. And I'm not talking about technology only in the high-tech sector, because you can be a big company from traditional industry. There are plenty of big companies of the traditional sector that have innovative ideas, whether it is in the production, whether it is in the marketing, whether it is in the servicing. So the world is there waiting for new ideas all the time. Therefore, even the small companies, once they identify that there are needs and they have the answers for those needs, the sky is the limit. So really, I mean, remember, all those entrepreneurs of small and medium companies should all remember that even the big company started as small. So it's always by working more, striving, looking at the competition, learning from others. Those are the solutions. And I must say also, sometimes luck is also important, but this is something I cannot provide. Some people are more lucky than others, and luck is also an element in business success. But if you work hard, and if you look at trying to improve yourself all the time, and all the time question, what can I do better? How can I improve? Those are the best recipe for growing and for developing.
Thank you very much. We are now going to give each of the panelists a few seconds to round off, and we are going to start with Mr. Busha, if you have any last comment.
May I take this opportunity, I think, to you here, to thank all the panelists. It's been great listening to you and great presentations. But I think the main issue I want to leave all us with is that only if we decide to get them, and to work together, if I take the last points, with integrity, honest, hard work, and same energy, but the energy must be directed towards creating an equitable, inclusive society that considers the future and the environment that surrounds us, then the entire ecosystem will be sustainable. And I think we can create a great world together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boucher. Dr. Malash, any last words for us?
Yes, what we need to do together is to promote the positive approach, because this is challenge ahead, not just for one person, not just for one family, not just for one country. It is a global challenges, and we need the global cooperation and global responsibility. But let's start from ourselves. Try to do the best for our people and for our countries.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Katarivas, any final words?
Just to thank you again for the opportunity of talking to so many people from so many different backgrounds. I think believing in oneself, knowing that, and having hope in the future, and once you are self-confident, then you can do everything. And really, I mean, the world is an open place, and we should take advantage of that, and we should take advantage of friendship, of contact, of fraternity, working with people, for the people. That's the best that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now going to move to the closing ceremony and the call to action. And this session is going to be moderated by Mrs. Maria Nazarova. She is the Secretary General of the UPF Russia, the Russian Federation. She graduated in Psychology and Social Work from Ural State Pedagogical University and has worked at various organizations affiliated with UPF in both the United States of America and in Japan. She currently serves as the Secretary General of UPF Russia. Welcome, Mrs. Nazarova.
Thank you, Dr. Tanga. This was an amazing session of the International Association for Peace and Economic Development. Thank you. And now we are coming to the end of our 3-day journey. As Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So I think during these 3 days, we used our time to sharpen the axe very well. And now we are ready to chop down the tree. Actually, tens of thousands of people watched this conference. Imagine what a strong impact this will have in creating a world of peace. So, to close our conference, let us hear some words of wisdom from respected leaders from the Africa region and from the region of Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East. Our first speaker for the closing session will be Dr. Michael Balcom, Chairman of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification of Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East. Dr. Balcom, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria, and good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Indeed, it has been a long journey these last 3 days, and I'd like to speak briefly on the topic, what have we learned? And if I may, I'm going to share my screen just as an aide-memoire that all of us can review together. So let me shut the slideshow. Here it is, what I've learned in this great cooperation. And first of all, I think we've learned that Africa and Europe make great partners. And that's particularly pleasing to me because although you may know it, looking at my face, I was actually born in Nigeria. I'm an African and an American. And I'm really happy to see this cooperation between the great continents of Africa and Europe. So one thing I think that we've learned is that we do better when we're working together. And as I attended all the different sessions, the first thing I realized is that peace is everybody's responsibility. And in fact, we've had 6 different sessions looking at some of the people who are responsible for peace. Of course, heads of state and government and their families. That's the Task Summit Council. Elected representatives, senators, congressmen, diplomats. That's for the International Association. of Parliamentarians for Peace, spiritual, religious, community leaders, scholars and academics, media professionals, and we've just heard some very good presentations from business and financial leaders as well. Of course, peace is everyone's responsibility, but also I think it's important to remind ourselves that peace is my responsibility. It can't only be left to the professionals, to other people over there. We have to think that before them, it's up to me. And there are a lot of excuses for not being a peacemaker. I make some of them myself. Perhaps you hear them yourself in your own mind or from others. One is, I'm not important enough. Oh, I don't have a position. I'm not Secretary General of the United Nations or Prime Minister of my country, although some of our participants were. I'm not educated enough. I don't have the necessary qualifications, or I lack resources, or I'm too young or too old, or a man or a woman, or my country is poor. These are all, I think, excuses, because peace is in fact the responsibility of every single human being. And as Dr. Haktahan Moon, our UPF co-founder, says in her memoir, The Mother of Peace, peace starts with me. That's where it starts, not somewhere else out there. It starts with me. So that's a big lesson from this International Leadership Conference. But I want to take a moment also to go a little bit deeper to talk about the origins of the Universal Peace Federation. Now, some of you who've been attending from the beginning will have heard this in some of the earlier sessions, but we need to remind ourselves, why was the Universal Peace Federation founded, and what does this word universal really mean? Well, of course, one of its goals is to create partnerships and alliances for peace. And over the last 15 years, I think we've done extremely well. And we're very proud of all the different organizations that have joined with us over the years. Thank you so much. The other is to support the successes, but also to address some of the shortcomings of the United Nations itself. UPF was founded in 2005. That was the 60th anniversary of the founding of the UN. And at the time, there was widespread discussion within the UN itself. What can this body do to get back on track? Because there's more wars, less peace than ever before. And of course, another goal of UPF is to support innovative peace projects. And we've heard about some of them here, such as the World Summit and the Peace Road, which is one of my favorites, a citizen initiative to bring people across borders and cultures to meet each other face to face, and one day to connect the whole world together through one highway of peace. But also UPF has an internal component, one of them to promote the family as the cornerstone of peace. I think most of us would agree that if there's no peace in your home, no peace in the relationship with your children or with your husband or wife, you're not going to be able to be a very effective peacemaker. And there's another thing, that the founders of UPF consistently mentioned that there are fundamental limitations to human effort and capability. And in fact, we need to call on the help of God. Now, UPF is not advocating for any particular faith, but it is saying very clearly that the solution to peace cannot come only from a human effort. And to finish, I want to quote you from the founding message that was delivered by the late Dr. Sun Myung Moon at the Lincoln Center in New York on September the 12th, 2005. It was my privilege to be sitting there in the audience of that day, and I see some friends on the call who were likewise there. Let's remind ourselves of the bold words that he spoke on that occasion. He said this towards the end of his speech: I leave you with a choice. There can be no perfection in ignorance. The message from heaven that I convey to you today is both a blessing and a warning to this generation. I will take the lead in establishing true families, true societies, true nations, and the true kingdom of the peaceful, ideal world. And now a challenge. Will you join me as I rise and gain strength in accordance with heavenly fortune? Will you join me? Or will you remain captive behind the same old walls, all of them the devil's handwork, the wall of your religion, the wall of your culture, the wall of your nationality and the wall of your race and spend the remainder of your time on earth in agony and regret. We say in England, those are fighting words. Heaven is summoning you to be the wise leaders who will set aright this world of evil and establish a new heaven and a new earth, a new culture and an ideal kingdom. I mean, these are a battle cry to a spiritual battle, but also a diplomatic battle, a peace battle, to be wise leaders who will set aright this world of evil. Yes, we have to be honest about the state of the world we live in, not to be afraid of it, but to recognize that there is a need for lasting and profound change. And I think that's exactly what we've been doing on this International Leadership Conference. We have indeed set aside the barriers of our race, our nation, our language, and we have joined together in a commitment to be peace builders. So on behalf of the founders, the late Dr. Sun Myung Moon and the mother of peace, Dr. Hacha Moon, and from all of us here in Europe to our colleagues in Africa and beyond, I want to say thank you very much. Let's not stop here, but go forward to visibly see the world change. UPF has many programs and projects. Some of the later speakers will talk of them. But we need you. We need to all work together to build God, and good times are coming. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Balcom, for your encouraging words. Now, allow me to invite Mr. Jacques Marion, the President of the Universal Peace Federation for Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East, who will present the proposal of the resolution of the conference. Mr. Marion?
Dear participants, dear panelists, thank you very much for your attendance. I will read to you the, is there a problem with my, okay. I will read to you the proposal and the recommendation that have been made, and that will be posted on our website, and you can give your own suggestion and feedback. This is part of the resolution that is being proposed at this time. We hereby summarize the core recommendations for consideration by our global UPF network, as well as by governments, NGOs, faith-based organizations, and the people of the world. These recommendations have been put forward by the UPF regions that convene sessions of ILC 2020 and by UPF associations. ISCP, the International Summit Council for Peace. We propose the formation of 3 ISCP working committees for the Asia Pacific, for the Americas, and for the Africa, Europe, Middle East to support and cultivate partnerships with multilateral institutions, including the United Nations in honor of its 75th anniversary. IAPP, which is International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. We propose the formation of a working committee of parliamentarians to promote the establishment of a worldwide communication system that will act as an early warning system for pandemics and to bring resolutions forward that allow a unified voice of parliamentarians for peace. IAFLP, the International Association of First Ladies for Peace. We propose the formation of an IAFLP working committee on education to improve the quality of life of all people. IAPD, the International Association for Peace and Development. We propose the formation of an IAPD interfaith working committee of elders who serve as advisors, counselors, and facilitators in venues of conflict, social unrest, and humanitarian disasters. IMAP, the International Media Association for Peace. We propose the establishment of an IMAP working committee dedicated to creating standards of excellence and a code of ethics for journalists, publishers, and social media influencers. IAAP, the International Association of Academicians for Peace. We propose the formation of an IAAP working committee to explore ways to apply principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values to specific critical problems affecting our world. IAED, finally, which we had our webinar just now, International Association for Peace and Economic Development. We propose the establishment of an IAED working committee of business leaders in each of the great regions to identify opportunities for trade, investment, and service to improve the quality of life of all people. And finally, IAYSP, which is the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace, which is an association that took part in the Asia part of this international conference. As I said, and as you know, you have 3 different parts of this international leadership conference. It was held Asia, Europe and Africa, and the Americas. IAYSP, we propose the development of an IAYSP educational program dedicated to the moral and social development of youth. We ask that these proposals be given serious consideration, including feedback and suggestions. We conclude with words of gratitude to Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, co-founder of the Universal Peace Federation, and congratulations to the Universal Peace Federation on the occasion of its 15th anniversary. So these are the recommendations that are part of this resolution proposal that will be posted on our UPF website for your information, for your feedback, and for your suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marion. Coming closer and closer to the end of our program, I would like to invite Dr. Kasumi Otsuka, the chairman of the Universal Peace Federation of Europe, Eurasia, and the Middle East. Dr. Otsuka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Masha. Excellencies, dignitaries, panelists, and dear friends. Thank you very much for your participation in the IRC 2020. This online IRC is finishing now with great success. We could achieve many more than expected in the last 3 days. This was truly great. On behalf of the UPF Europe and the Middle East, let me express my deep thanks to your cooperation first. Looking back the past several days, I was also very much impressed by the African UPF staff's enthusiastic work. That is why I wish to say thank you very much, Dr. Cassie Rigney and the African UPF staff for your splendid work. I also wish to send my special thanks to the FFWP chairman of Europe and the Middle East, Dr. Mike Barkham, and chairman of the Africa, Dr. Bakari Kamara, for your support. This IRC was very well organized with all your support. Thank you very much. Finally, I'd like to thank to all the staff and people who worked for this IRC 2020 success. Deeply appreciating. I hope I can see you soon at the next conference someday in the near future. Thank you very much, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you, Dr. Otsuka. For short remarks at the very end of our conference, I would like to invite Mrs. Catherine Rigney, the chairman of the Universal Peace Federation of Africa. Mrs. Rigney.
Thank you very much. Dear Excellencies, heads of state and government, presidents of national assemblies, parliamentarians, first ladies, women leaders, religious leaders, media leaders, academicians, business leaders, you are all very well thanked for your participation in this 3-day webinar. All our honorable participants and ambassadors of peace from all over the world, in particular, those from the regions of Europe, Eurasia, Middle East, and of course, Africa. It is a pleasure for me to take the floor at this closing ceremony of the first virtual conference of ILC 2020 to thank all of you for your active and kind participation. First and foremost, however, I would like to recognize and thank our group chairman of Family Federation for World Peace and Unification activities all across Africa. Dr. Bakari Kamara is the uniting force behind all of our peacemaking projects blooming in Africa today, bringing us together to realize the myriad of projects being initiated by Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, the Mother of Peace. This has started with a project that we call the 10 Heavenly Projects of Africa. These are 10 projects initiated by Dr. Hak Jahan Moon to bring heavenly fortune to Africa, declaring the success that Africa shall become the heavenly shining continent where light emanates from this continent and shines all over the world, ushering in a bright new age. During these past 3 days, all the panelists and the participants showed their dedication and their adhesion, not only to the cause of peace worldwide, but especially to the vision of peace of the founder of the Universal Peace Federation and all of these associations that we just mentioned, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, the Mother of Peace. In the light of your active participation, we can already hold hope in our hearts that the long-awaited goal and hope of humanity, which is to achieve peace on earth, a world of freedom, peace, unity, and happiness, can hopefully finally become a reality. The overriding question facing humanity is that of peace. In order for all of us to experience happiness, we must solve the problem of our ignorance of God, our Heavenly Parent, and His providence. It is also evident that we must eradicate conflicts and antagonisms and all kinds of difficulty between persons, institutions, and nations. For the founders of the Universal Peace Federation, Reverend Dr. Sung Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, they feel that if we dig deeper and deeper, we will get to the bottom of where our problem lies, where true peace and true love prevail. However, this background has never been fully explained in human history. If there is an Almighty God, is He satisfied with the reality and the crises facing our humanity today? Or is God doing something to bring the world back to its original purpose? If there was a person or group on earth today commissioned by God to fulfill this mission, what would that group proclaim? I believe that this group would warn that our world is in error, in ignorance, and we would insist that mankind radically change course. This is the mission of the Universal Peace Federation. As expressed by Dr. Thomas McDivitt in his video, the age we are in at this moment is a time of extreme change for humanity, like almost no other time in human history. Therefore, a new dialogue must begin, and we must search for solutions that have heretofore not been part of our dialogue worldwide. We must experience a necessary revolution of the human spirit, and now is that time. Thanks to this virtual ILC conference and all the communications and presentations from various sessions, we have come to understand and convince ourselves that this vision of our founder of UPF and the achievements and initiatives of the Universal Peace Federation can provide humanity with solutions for a united and prosperous world. UPF is dedicated to go a long way to infuse the United Nations and governmental, intergovernmental, and non-governmental, regional, national organizations with a new vision and a new dynamism based on the principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values. On September the 27th, there will be an enormous webinar, a rally of hope, hosted by the founder of the Universal Peace Federation, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, that we affectionately call Mother Moon, Mother of Peace. This rally will be broadcast live on national television stations in many countries around the world, and there will be several million people attending and registering worldwide. I invite all of you to participate in this important event, where the dialogue concerning this new age of difficulty and challenges will continue with leaders from all around the world. We must all become active members of the world family and participate in the important discussions that can truly change our world. A time of spiritual emphasis that can bring us together as one human family under one creator, and that is God. May Heavenly Parent bless all of you. Thank you so much for attending. And I greet especially my colleague, Dr. Katsumi Otsuka, who worked in Africa together with us and shares really our vision of a heavenly shining Africa for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rigney. With this, we conclude our conference, and at the same time, we open the door to a whole new level of development for the Universal Peace Federation. 15 years is just the beginning. Now, I would like to ask all coordinators of the UPF associations and staff of the conference to appear on the screen. Let us switch to gallery mode so that we have a chance to see all those who have worked so hard to prepare this conference. We are very glad to have spent these 3 days together with you. Let us all smile to the participants. Smile and wave and say hello and thank you for all your efforts and for everything you've done during this period of time. This was really a great conference. Thank you very much. I hope we could make enough pictures so that we can share with everybody. And thank you all for this great conference. Let us hear maybe some music, or if no, then let music be present in our minds and hearts. Thank you, and we conclude this conference. Goodbye and see you soon. At the end of our conference. So thank you everyone and see you soon.